I'm Patrick Lugo, author, illustrator, comic creator, and art director for Kung Fu Magazine.
I'm Kurtis Fujita, comic book creator, also a Kung Fu instructor.
The Comics Fu Show, where we stand at the crossroads of comics, Kung Fu, and all kinds of crazy pop culture. Wait a minute. How'd that get there?
Hello.
We did it again, didn't we?
I did it again. Sorry.
What a cold open that was.
Yeah, we closed and opened everything at the same time. Okay, well, we got the mistakes out of the way. Welcome to the Comics Fu Show. I'm Kurtis Fujita, and this...
And I'm Patrick Lugo, and here we are stumbling around at the crossroads of comics, martial arts, and pop culture.
Definitely. And we have a very exciting show today for you. So we are going to be talking with Jeff Johnson, comic book creator, excellent artist, illustrator, martial artist, about his new campaign, Rogue's Kingdom. We originally slated to have esteemed author James Robinson join us. He's unavailable. Something came up, but we do have Jeff, and we're going to go into a deep dive with him talking about this amazing Kickstarter that's going on, this campaign for an amazing comic book. So without further ado, what do you say?
Well, before we do that, we should play his introduce him with his book trailer, because what better way would there be to get pumped about this
Excellent
project?
I'm gonna let you click that.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome to the show, Mr. Jeff Johnson.
Thanks, guys. It's good to see you.
Pause for applause, Jeff.
And man, that is dramatic. That, that video is so good.
And before we start, we already have people in the chat. Who do we have there, Patrick?
Well, we have our tried and true Wuxia man who's showed up here. But I've also realized that we have some guests tuning in from Singapore, right, who we had the pleasure of talking with just yesterday, more or less, considering depending on where you count your date lines, right? So we have Kurtis.
Yeah, we have Aping Ho, also known on YouTube as That Chinese History Guy, all the way from Singapore, whose current campaign, Zhao #1 martial arts comic book, is out.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So, hey,
yeah, totally. We just covered that. Covered that project yesterday. For those, because of our pre-recorded set, pre-recorded because of the time difference. But it also explains how their graphics showed up right at the beginning of the show, because they were here watching, right? So it must have been the chi.
Yes,
right. That's very cool. I love how much comics has embraced martial arts and how many different places and people are doing really good combat now, instead of back in the day combat. I mean, the best combat we would get was in Power Man and Iron Fist, and Kerry Gamble, I thought, actually did a really good job. And then in Shang-Chi was also really good with Day. That stuff was amazing.
Definitely. And Wuxia Man, also, we should use his normal name, Brian Chansey, works with me on Shadow Ghost. He also says the chi is with us.
So excellent.
No, agreed. It's you look at some of those older martial arts, quote unquote, I put in air quotes, comic books, and everybody's doing the robot, and the closest thing to martial arts move is flying sidekick, and gets a little stale. So it's nice.
Well, I mean, I think it was interesting because, I mean, when I was a kid, I started doing Shotokan in Hawaii.
Oh, yeah.
And we did it in a gym at the local school, and we didn't have pads, and we did 3-point sparring and we sparred, but like it was a hard style. Like we hit the Macklemore board. I mean, that was just and that was in Hawaii, and I had not seen martial arts really come into the States until I guess it was like the late 70s and the early 80s. It became to be more popular. But even then, it was still mostly Americanized martial arts. There wasn't a lot of, I mean, it was some Taekwondo and American karate and Chuck Norris, who is a badass, but like we didn't get, I mean, even when I was living in the Bay Area, you didn't get to see a lot of the variety of martial arts that you do now today.
Definitely. And it's funny you mentioned Hawaii. I think a lot of people who aren't, I'm from Hawaii, you from Hawaii, it's a lot of people don't they have a misunderstanding of Hawaiian and Hawaiian culture as a whole, and you just think it's this tropical paradise, and it's gorgeous. It's a wonderful place, great people,
right.
Great food. But people are tough there. They're different kind of tough on the island,
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why I started doing martial arts. I started learning karate when I was a kid because I was a haole and got into fights. Yeah. I mean, that was just what happened. But back in the day, it was like, it was almost quaint, like I was a kid and it was scary. Obviously, a fight's always frightening, but if you got hit once and didn't fall down and took it like a champ or even fought back well, and then it was over. Like that was it. Then you were friends. Which now seems kind of crazy, but like that was just the way it worked. It was almost more of a rite of passage than actual combat.
Absolutely. Some of my Kung Fu brothers and I, we beat the heck out of each other, and we're like the best of friends now. And if we were out and there's another school there and trouble was about to jump off, it was like, I can beat him up, but you can't beat him up.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, my wife. So you have my kohai from Aikido, and we're all black belts, second-degree black belts, and we've been doing it for 10 years together, and it's a close relationship. Training with people for a very long time, and Megan just started doing Krav Maga and Jiu-Jitsu, and she now knows what it's like to have a kohai. Like she now knows what it's like to have a group of people that you train with, and how much that friendship's just different than other kinds of friendships. Because you're right, like I'll take a shot in the mouth from a friend in sparring class where I'm like, okay, that was good. Well done. But like anywhere else in the street, like, no, that's not cool.
Definitely. And looks like Brian Ujaman Chansey. It sounds very different from what I saw in Hawaii Five-0 and Baywatch. Yeah, little bit. Yeah. Well,
and we certainly just took a deep dive, like right from the word go. So one thing I wanted to mention, right, because you shouted out the Power Man and Iron Fist, right? Like this is coming from the guy who wrote the book on fight choreography, and that's something that we should make sure the folks watching know that, if we're gonna jump, aside from the fact Kurtis, right, Kung Fu master, there's a feature that we like to include on this show, which is Ask a Kung Fu Master. But before we get to that, right, like we're here to talk comics, particularly Jeff's comics, right? But like to really dive into the fight choreography, I just want to say at some point I want to really discuss sword use and the martial arts within a fantasy setting. So let me just put a pin on that before we get back to the schoolyard brawl.
well, since you kind of brought us to the subject, Patrick, maybe I would be curious because I feel like working in comics and working, penciling comics. I mean, it is in some ways it's like martial arts where it is a level of challenge and intensity that most people would never understand unless they've done it. And the whole collaborative process, I would be curious about the relationship and how you and, the writer of the book, James Robinson, how you both became acquainted with each other and how this whole project kind of came to fruition. How did this whole thing start? And how did you first connect with him?
So James and I have known each other so I was doing a book at Malibu called Solitaire way back in the day. Yes. And then he was doing Firearm at the same time. And so comics back in the mid 90s were a lot more of an insular kind of almost, as a tinier crew, right? It was not unlike a dojo. We all knew each other. We all, especially in the Bay Area, or we all hung out a fair amount, and then you did shows together, and you talked a lot more, and it was just a smaller crew. And so James and I became friends when we were still working at the same company at Malibu, and we've always kind of wanted to do something together. But then James, he went on to do his comic stuff. I went on to do other comic stuff, and we both kind of got out of comics for a while. James started writing screenplays and working for TV, and I got into animation, but we've still kept in touch. And then we both kind of were tired of the thing that we had been doing and missed doing comics. And so we just started kind of like chit-chatting and kicking around the idea, like, well, let's do something together. And we both landed on fantasy, and we both landed on kind of a swords and sorcery kind of thing. And we kind of kicked it around. And like, remember that movie Paper Moon with what's her name? Tatum, the little girl. Can't remember the guy's name.
Tatum O'Neal with
That's
her
it.
dad, Ryan O'Neal.
Yeah, right. So it's a great little movie. It's about a con man and selling stuff door to door, and like she's kind of a little con man apprentice. And then I guess just the confluence of events, like, so that came on TV, or he had seen that and always kind of liked that dynamic. And I had just seen the Three Musketeers, like the old school one. And I thought, like, I always do fantasy stuff, and I always see fantasy stuff being done in the Middle Ages and the Dark Age. And it's always cold castles, and it's always that particular kind of armor. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something else. And so I decided, like, I asked James, like, what if we set it in sort of like 17th century France? And that sort of, it's the Three Musketeers, there's sword fighting and pole axes and general combat arts, but like, let's not have guns. Let's not have gunpowder. Let's not have cannons. And instead of firearms, we'll throw magic in. And so that will be the arms race in our world is wizards. And then from there, we just sort of kick stuff around, and the story kind of took off on its own. Once we had the two main characters, James came up with this entire world and this really great idea of they're ne'er-do-wells and troublemakers, and they both get busted, and they're in jail, and they're on their way to basically be put in prison or even get hung at the new city. And then so they're in this caravan, and they're in a prison car. And in the front of the caravan is the new wizard that's going to the city and his guardian. And the new wizard's he's 10 or 11. And so he's sort of like the nuclear deterrent on his way to the city. And then that caravan gets attacked by centaurs and ruffians. And those first two characters, then in the front of the caravan get killed, the little wizard and his guardian. And then Rondo and Peachy, who are our older character and our younger character, survive. And they decide, instead of running away to just get caught again and put back in jail, they decide to impersonate the two characters, to take their places, and then go to the city and steal as much as they can, and then disappear with some gold, with some booty. And so that's the beginning of the story. And then so they're really reluctant heroes. They wind up getting involved in all the politics and all the magical war, and they plan on just skedaddling with gold, but they wind up being the heroes that the country needs. And they wind up saving the king and saving his daughter, and basically doing all the things they had no intention of doing, but becoming the hero. So it's James just wrote a really great story. The characters are super cool. And then we also have a Zorro character, the princess of the kingdom, who no one knows. She actually dresses up and fights crime and defends the innocent. And so it's this, it's layers and layers of really, really cool fantasy tropes, but like, I think done in a really interesting way. So, I'm excited. Even just talking about it, I get excited about reading. Like when I read it, I'm like, holy crap, this is great. which is one of the reasons it's taken me so long to draw. Like I love the story so much that I wanted to make sure that every bit of art that I made lived up to what James had written.
Definitely. I mean, it sounds great, and it seems like there's a fair amount of world building, which is part and parcel of good fantasy. How long was there would you say from when you guys first came up with the idea till when you started actually doing, roughing out the actual book? Was that a short period, a long period? Was this over years? You guys were just kind of kicking ideas back and forth, and then the momentum kind of shifted, or how did that all come to be?
I think so. It took us a while to sort of figure out what the story was. We went back and forth, setting the world, setting the scenarios, getting the characters in place. And it took us a while to get everything in place so that the machine just sort of started working on its own. And then once that happened, and then James started writing a script, then I went into heavy development. And that was, so I don't know, I told you guys that I went into animation for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the great things about animation is that you do just backgrounds, or you do just characters, or you do just storyboards. And I did all of those jobs, but I got really used to having a Bible. Like, oh, I know what Batman looks like from every angle, or I know what this character, how this vehicle works. And then I have an exploded view that's done, or I have a SketchUp of this city that I can just put people in and move the camera around. So I got used to having that, but it was just me. So I wound up doing all of those jobs and producing just a ridiculous amount of background material before I even started drawing a page. Like I knew, like I designed that city that you see in, I think, let me see if I can't, I'll pull it up. I think I have the black and white and the color here. But so the cityscape, I wound up building that city in my mind, and then also adding like a SketchUp model. Like I've done so much work on that city that I actually know where the neighborhoods are.
And sorry to interrupt, just for those that don't know, when he's saying SketchUp model, SketchUp's a program for basically doing kind of 3D models, and it's used a lot in the animation industry, so that you have not only as reference, but sometimes you can turn the 3D model, and it's a great tool used by a lot of people in animations.
Yeah, let me see if I can't present my share screen.
Mm-hmm.
No, I cannot seem to do that. How do I?
Let's see.
There it is.
Got it? Okay. All right, we're going to throw that in there.
Can you guys see that?
Yep, there we go. Oh, sorry, Patrick, that's all you. Go for it.
And third time's a charm.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So I built that whole city. And so there's the palace on the right. That's where the king, and then there's the lower quarters, and then there's remnants of the old city that I have built on, almost like an old Roman city with the aqueducts and the arches. And then it's a port city because we wanted to have cool stuff coming from all over the world into this one main city, because I really wanted to mix different martial arts styles, because I wanted to have it be European, but I also really wanted to have any kind of reason to do the giant axe, the horse cutting axe, or I wanted to throw all that stuff in there, so I created a place that it would make sense that all that stuff was there.
That's great.
And there's even a mountain. So I know there's a mountain that the castle was built on. It's a giant hill, and inside that hill is the giant magical library that you have to go down a bunch of staircases to get to. So, I mean, I have maps. I have all kinds of, I have street addresses. I have all that nonsense.
Wow. What I love is, we always often said in character design, one of the big things is silhouette, right? That identify, but you don't always hear about that, but also in, urban design and in buildings, and you have this iconic silhouette here. It's not just flat, one note. It's, I'm talking to our buddy, Michael Chang, about stuff, and I'm kind of a firm believer in terms of development art that even if the audience doesn't know, or the reader doesn't know, they feel it. They feel that depth and that authenticity. It comes through in the final product, whether or not people know about what went into it. And you can see that here. It's great.
Yeah, thanks. Let me see if I think that's That's one of the few ones I have. But it reminds me of when I did Way of the Rat, and so I wanted to make sure so that each character not only had their own silhouette and they looked unique and specific. I wanted them to all move in a very personalized way. So I gave each of them their own style of martial arts. Like Boone was definitely a Jackie Chan, Chow Fat kind of more acrobatic, bigger moves. And then the judge, he definitely had more of an eagle claw, rending and tearing. And then the Silken Ghost, she definitely had the classic Gordon Luce spear, staff fighting. And so I wanted them all to have. Oh, does he really have the DVD? That's amazing. Yeah, I did.
If it would be in anyone's library,
yeah,
it would
right.
be.
Yeah, I did some of the voices on that, and
you did?
Well, yeah. I mean, all those motion capture DVDs that we did of the CrossGen stuff, like all of it was all just us artists, and I think there might have been one or two professional actors that came in, but it was just all of us doing our best. And we're not voice actors, and you could tell the production. We tried. I mean, the production on those DVDs is earnest, but not necessarily skilled.
That's great. That's great to know.
Yeah.
One other thing I just wanted to comment on when you were talking about the you had your cityscape, right? I was really thinking of how much it reminds me of the great wave of kind of what's coming out here. Kanagawa,
I think
great wave. So
the Japanese woodcut.
Yeah. Yes, right. The classic great wave. So I was looking at that cityscape and I'm like, where have I seen it before? And I just wanted to mention it to you because I don't know if you did it intentionally, but you did do it.
Well, what's interesting is that woodcut is gorgeous for many reasons. One, it's historical and it's beautiful, but also it follows the golden mean. It follows that curve, that ratio, and so I do that a lot in my art. So whenever I feel as though something isn't quite working, I'll always go back to basics and I'll line up my rule of thirds and I'll set up my ratio and I'll make sure that everything is balanced. That way that my underdrawing has a logic and a math to it that makes sense to me.
That's amazing.
So you're right. You're right, Patrick, 100% that's in there.
And that's just one panel, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just one panel in your book.
Yeah.
So definitely. I mean, just to I feel almost as though we should replay the trailer just so people can get a glimpse of how many other images are compacted into this book. What do you think?
Yeah, take it away.
All right.
I'll let you do that, Patrick.
All right. Yeah. We've got this silent ongoing battle with the buttons.
I know, right? I played that game before.
Definitely.
All right. So let's check this out. This is so
That looks great.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, you can definitely. It's so funny when I look at that stuff again. So, and Mike Chang will definitely. He's known. He's seen me draw for decades. So he can definitely attest to the fact that I like a prime number. I like I like symmetry and I like balance in a drawing, and I will often err on. Sometimes I feel like my stuff can be a little too mechanical in places because I desperately want everything to fit together perfectly. And so I'll do I'll do the golden ratio. I'll make sure that I have an odd number of things, so that the balance is flowing. I'll balance my black and white shapes to lean a certain way or push the eye a certain way. So yeah, I get when I talk about getting lost in the weeds, that's a lot of what it is.
Well, what's great is even if that may be the case, the end result has a very flowy and open sense. We were Patrick and I were privileged to be on your drink and draw launch party.
Oh, thanks a lot for that. You guys were amazing. I'm sorry that I couldn't join you. I got rained out.
Oh no, I mean it's live TV,
Right.
Yeah. But we were Scott Collins was explaining stuff, and Scott was pointing out how I think it's the character's the Terror is her name, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she was having that battle with the guy with the
stabby. Right.
One of the things that we were just talking and riffing and looking, and I thought was so amazing, is the flow, and how when you looked at it visually, the ratio of diagonals to the verticals was so well thought out and composed to create movement, and how even the background elements had strong verticals, but the audience watching really juxtaposed against the diagonals of them fighting was just brilliant. So much movement in a still image. Just great work.
Thanks. Well, I think a lot of that comes from, like having looked early on in my martial arts experience, like reading the Bruce Lee book, like in how much life his little figure drawings had in them, and seeing just how much tension there was in the X's and in the lines of force. I think that, and then learning how to draw from John Buscema and how to draw comics the Marvel way, and just seeing how the gesture drawing had so much direction to it. I think that I just carry that through every time I do a drawing. I mean, it's imprinted in there really deep.
Definitely. And it looks like Api Ngo.
The logic plus flow. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But
speaking of which, one thing occurred to me while watching your trailer, right, was that there was a kind of an ulterior motive, because it highlighted some of the characters that we'll be seeing in the book, right, including a certain Minotaur.
Right.
So, because once again, this is coming back to that thing that I'm kind of circling around in terms of like fight logic and fight choreography in a fantasy setting, right? So, I'm not going to say whether or not headbutting a Minotaur is a good idea, but I just wanted to know if you considered that as a possibility in setting up a fight scene.
Well, so the fight scene that takes place in the second issue. So I'll give away a little, so the Minotaur shows up at the end of the first issue, and that's the character that Rondo has to fight. And Rondo is he's a great fencer. He's used to be a soldier, so he knows his way around a battle. But all things being equal, the bigger opponent almost always wins, and the Minotaur is huge and has 4 arms and a shield and a giant axe. So Rondo is in trouble, and one of the ways that he gets to win is that Peachy actually hits the Minotaur in the face with a rock, and it distracts him. And so even if no matter how much of a badass you are, if you're not paying attention to your surrounding, like anything can happen. And so Peachy is always like, Rondo will face an opponent, but Peachy does not fight that way. He's tiny and he moves around, and between the two of them, there's very few people they can't beat. But like it's like headbutting a Minotaur, bad idea. But it's just a terrible.
So Jeff, when you're describing that, you were kind of giving me a flashback of some of the like the ongoing debates that would happen on like the kungfumagazine.com forums when people would start talking about like practical application of street fighting and comparing like MMA and like successes within the octagon as proof for effectiveness on the streets, right? But the obvious counterpoint to that would be something like you described, that random rock thrown by somebody else who's in the mix, because the octagon is still a controlled environment, right? It's not, even though it's the closest thing that we have to like gladiatorial sports, right? It's still a sport. So
Right. When I think it's really interesting. So I've done. I started off with Shotokan when I was a kid, which is, you know, in that particular kind of setting, it wasn't real fighting, right? No, it's a, you know, you're sparring and someone's watching and someone's keeping points. And even though we were hitting pretty hard, you know, it was frowned upon. I mean, I once got disqualified from a competition because I did a spinning back fist and I hit a guy too hard because I wasn't in control of the technique. So I got disqualified, which was perfectly fair because I knew, like, I got panicked basically. And then when I do some jujitsu, and like that's pretty close to stuff, right? You're working hard, right? You're still doing controlled techniques, but you know, you're working pretty close to your maximum capacity, but there's still rules in place, right? Like there's still you're not hitting anyone, you're not doing any of that. And so I do think and then when in the Army, the combat that I learned in the Army is totally different. It's not about, it was, you know, you kick a guy, when you kick him as hard as you can in the head when he's down. Like that was one of the moves that we practiced. We practiced the football kick. You throw a guy and then you football kick him. That's not something that you would ever do, even like on the street. Usually, like a fight, you would not take it that far. And I do think it's an interesting conversation because what is the criteria, right? Like what is the context of the combat? And what I love about comics and combat in comics is that it all serves the narrative, right? Like, because how a person fights, what they do, that reveals who they are as a character, but also the combat has to move the plot forward in a way. So the kind of combat that I really practice is thematic more than anything else. But yeah, no, I'm very curious. Yeah, I've read some of those conversations and it's interesting to see who, right? It's very much like who would beat who, the Hulk or Superman. It really depends on what universe you're in,
Yeah,
and who's writing and drawing the story.
Yeah, and it usually devolves into my dad can beat up your dad, you know?
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I think
In some cases, it devolved into who was going to pay for the airfare for the other guy to fly,
Right.
you know,
Right.
across country to prove their point.
Yeah.
But you know,
Definitely.
internet warfare, right? Back in the
Right.
day.
I had a
Um,
friend who used to teach. I can't remember what kind of karate he taught. I think maybe it was Shito-ryu or Shorin-ryu. I can't remember. He was a great guy. He used to work at Marvel. And he was one of the advertising marketing guys. And I went to a class, and it was in Jersey. And he was powerful and fast. And he had gotten into a fight at a hockey game or something. I'm like, oh, well, did you win? He goes, no one wins a fight. I broke a knuckle. I mean, my hand was jacked up for a month. Like, there is no winning in real world situations like that.
Oh, definitely. You know, and I think the truth is the reason nobody's uncovered the perfect answer or the perfect martial artist, because it really is that random. It's that dangerous.
Right.
You know, every exception to every rule, right?
Right.
But before we go too far into it, I want to rewind it back because Jeff just dropped a little pearl of wisdom that I think people should be aware of. But there's a common thing in when there's crowdfunding campaigns, big or small, industry veterans, newcomers, where the book isn't done, the book is, you know, or hasn't even started. There's people that sometimes, you know, Michael Chang, our good friend, we were talking about some campaigns, not to be named, you know, years and years go by and they're not fulfilled, you know.
Right.
You just said that you're already talking about the second issue.
Oh,
which lends me to believe that not only are you and the team committed to seeing this through, but you've already gotten a sizable amount of the work. So for the people that are interested in backing, how far along is issue one? So
issue one. So I'm all done with issue one. The colors are pretty much done with issue one, and we're waiting for the final letters for issue one. So once the campaign is done, the letters will be done in like a week or so, and so everything is ready to go. And so once the campaign is done, we're going right to the printer, and we should have stuff out to people as soon as we get it back from the printer. And then issue two is very much already in the can. Also, there's I still have some of the inks left to finish, but not really much at all. And then once again, colors and letters are in the process of being done on that one too. So the goal is to, once people have the first issue in their hand and they've finished reading it, I would like to start the second Kickstarter and get the second book out to people as soon as possible. The same is true with the third. Like, so James has already written the first story arc, the first 5-issue story arc, and we've already plotted out the second 6-issue story arc, and we already have plans for the third issue story, or the third story arc. And like, we easily have 100 issues that we want to do. There's so much story and there's so many characters that we want to get to. And the third one is all laid out and partially penciled. I put some of the samples in the Kickstarter so that you can see like where we're going to go, and also you can kind of see the process. So you can see the finished inks on the second one, and you can see some of the actual my ballpoint pen layouts for the third one.
That's excellent. And so for those watching or interested in backing the campaign, this is a huge thing, because there's a strong relationship between the creators and the readers. And so this team is in it for the long run. They're committed to it. It's not like they're going to lose direction or lose interest in it. They're fully invested. They've done the work ahead of time. And so you can rest assured that by backing this campaign, you're going to be immersed in this story.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to be in there for the long run. So it looks like Patrick pulled up the campaign. Maybe let's take a quick look at where the campaign's at as far as the goals.
Oh, well, let's start right at the top.
Yeah. Let's we got the man himself here. All right. So.
Oh wow, fantastic.
Yeah, 11,688.
That's wonderful. We're really close. I cannot even begin to express how grateful I am to everyone who's backing this thing. It's been a labor of love for a long time, and it's really wonderful to see people responding to it. Hey, if you want to go down, I'll talk about that fight scene page that I threw in. It was talk about fighting a Minotaur. There's
yes, I caught a glimpse of it.
Yeah,
here we go. Look at that.
So
speaking of Minotaurs, right? Let's discuss.
Yeah. So he's got 4 arms, and Rondo takes a big swing at him. Like, he leaps forward and does a backhanded swipe, and then it leaps in and crouches, closes, like, he's closing that distance, and then ducks under basically a thrust from the axe, which is parried by the Minotaur. And then the Minotaur, I pictured him like rotating and turning and then shifting to his back hoof and then just kicking Rondo with the forelegs. So like, I always try and think about making sure that my weight shifts make sense, and that if a character shifts this way, then that is the weapon that they're going to be using. Or if they're close and they're pivoting, that the closest defense is going to be the one that you'll always use. So I like to, in the same way I like to have a balance and logic in the drawing in and of itself. I always like to have every panel make logistical sense, right? So it always feels like that's what should happen. Like, a fight scene should seem inevitable, right? Oh, these are obviously the moves that happen based on the combination of these two characters and their motivations, and that even when they get beaten, right? So that bottom panel, like, I Dutched the angle, and Rondo is clearly going to get cut in half, and so then that's where the page turns, and then the next panel, that's when Peachy hits him in the face with a rock. So there's that moment of distraction. So yeah, it's
great.
It's one of the things I love drawing comics, and I love reading comics. And I remember when there's a scene in, I think it's issue 75 of Iron Fist, Power Man and Iron Fist, and at one point he draws this great shot of Iron Fist. It's like sidekicking a guy, but then, and it's an open panel. I remember it super clearly. It's an open panel, so there's no borders, and it's just him sidekicking a guy, but like his form is perfect, and the guy is just lifted up into the air, and it's one of those things where like the flow brings you, and it moves quickly from panel to panel, and then the way Kerry Gamble did it, it's like it just stops, and you just linger on that moment. And I thought, when I was a kid, even then I recognized like that was masterful storytelling. Like I was along for that ride, and now I'm like I got kicked. That's what I've always tried to do myself, is to make that kind of emotional connection to the action.
Definitely. And what I like is, I mean, is it's in sequence. I mean, that's something that's kind of rare when, especially as you get, if you do martial arts and you understand fight logic and how, one move leads to the next, and it's like a conversation. Not all comic book artists are adept at doing that. And so it's much more of a montage with a bunch of cool looking panels, cool looking poses, but there's no logic from move to move to move. What you have here is not only it being in sequence, not only it had logic, but then the actual storytelling and composition and great draftsmanship. And so it's like a triple threat. It's that's one thing that's important to me when I look at a comic book. I want to understand why they're fighting this way. Why is he doing this move? Before this and after, and this is great work.
Yeah, and I also I really wanted the Minotaur to also be a great fighter. So he kicks and he's winning, and his shield comes up, and he's definitely facing the shield, he's protecting his body. When you do a jump kick and you bring your bottom foot up to protect your groin. So I always like that kind. A good fighter is always defending himself, and I really wanted I want everyone in the book to be a badass, even if they're the villain. I want them to be respectable. So, I spent a lot of time choreograph. I spent a lot of time pretending to be a Minotaur. So,
no, it's great because that makes him more dangerous. I mean, he's not a big brute. The fact that he's parrying and moving to the side and shifting, means that he's a skilled fighter, not that he's just this big behemoth.
Yeah,
going in. Sorry, Patrick, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's because without even touching the martial arts aspect of it, which I do want to jump on, but you guys are handling that wonderfully. Just in terms of design and first of all, textbook example of how to use the CinemaScope panels correctly, but then just the whole nature of leading the eye, right? We it's a Western comic, so we're reading it left to right, and so the whole theory that Rollo is that his name right? Did I get that right? Rondo. Okay. So Rondo is trying to get from point A to point B, and that's left to right. And the fact that he never gets past the middle of the panel, right, is just such a powerful storytelling technique to show how immovable the Minotaur is, right? So
that's what I love about that is clearly you are a skilled artist, and you're a skilled, because that is something that is an emotional context. But I designed it specifically that he keeps hitting that. He's trying, but he hits that wall, and there's no getting around that. It's so funny to me because it's little stuff like that I think it gives you a connection to the danger. You're like, oh, it's frustrating, right? I want the whole story to have that same kind of emotional context, but especially the fight scenes. There should be a sense of victory and defeat and stagnation. That's like any good story. In the fight scene book that I wrote, I broke it down into 5 stages. There's the establishment of the relationship, and that's the 2 characters facing off, and whether they're facing each other directly or one's higher up or one has more power or less power. And then there's the first attack based on who is the aggressor or desperate. And then there's the reversal, which could go back and forth as many times as the fight scene needs. And then there's the final attack, the final blow, which ends the fight. And then there's the reestablishment of the new relationship. So what is the new dynamic? And that middle stage, the reversal, can go back and forth forever, but it does play back and forth along the middle of the panel. Oh, this way, nope, that way, this way. So it's one of the things that I mean, it's like a chess match. I just love reading it, and I love drawing it. It's so much fun. And I do love, once again, that's the math. I love the math of it, right? I love the calculations. Yeah.
Right. And then just the storytelling payoff, on a technical term, right? Because we've seen Rondo almost in profile the whole time, we see his back on the last panel, and it creates the illusion that this is 180 degrees turnaround of the camera, but it's not. It's Rondo who's been turned around, right? Because he got put on his ass in that
Yeah,
scene.
he did.
So
He did. He totally did. Yeah.
what a way to like put a button on that whole, you know, epic page.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely, it's one of the things that I mean, and I learned a lot of this doing storyboards, you know, doing like, and then I'd always studied martial arts films and film in general, but like when I got to work at Warner Brothers and Hasbro and places like that and study what Mike Chang was doing and Tim DeVar, like those guys are master storytellers. And the thing that they do that I learned is like how to position the camera. And that's something that you do. I mean, you do it in comics, but like doing an animation, you have to be super careful about it because things are moving and you can jump cut and you can make someone nauseous. So you have to be really, really clear and concise about what you're doing. Yeah, those guys are geniuses. I think that one of the things that's fun about animation is that you get to work with guys who are extremely skilled and also very humble because you're part of this much bigger project. So I don't think egos really come into it as much.
Can I just take 1 second to, you know, you mentioned the word moving the camera, and can I just take maybe it's a PTSD moment of trying to direct a photo shoot with a photographer and a kung fu master and his students, and trying to set up that sequence of like, you know, how is this supposed to be broken down so that it could be legible in an article, and you know, the kung fu master insisting no, all strikes happen simultaneously.
Oh,
You know?
right.
And then like, no, but we have to break this up for the reader, and you know, get cameraman, get under there, get under this other dude so you can see the foot stomp or whatever. Anyway, had to take that tangent to
no, I mean, I think it's one of the things I think is because, to be perfectly honest, like this is not, I mean, it's stretched out, right? Like it's a real fight happens in seconds. Like one of the moves I learned in Kempo is when someone strikes, if you have a knife and they have a knife, one of the moves is you pass and you cut the wrist, you cut underneath the elbow, you cut up under the arm, and then you slice back along behind the knee. And it's super fast. It's just it's S turns, and it's deadly. But like that does not look cool on camera, right? That is not. No one cares about that unless you were to cut in and go slow and see detailed cuts and tight movements. But like the best martial arts are designed to be invisible, right? So trying to show them and teach them, you almost have to cheat them and make them less efficient and effective so that someone can even see what's going on. Yeah, that's a tough thing. Like, I remember there's a great interview with Sammo Hung once about doing a fight scene and the difference between fight scenes and real fighting. And he laughed at fight scenes. He's like, that's not anything like it. Like a real fight's over in a second, right? Like this idea of a 15-minute fight scene it's crazy.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and then it's all about efficiency, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like I remember one time I met somebody who I won't say who they were or whatever, but they were one of these lofty martial artists, and they were saying, "Oh, my Sifu taught me how to spiral the chi through my legs into my stomach, and he rubbed it from my hand," and you know. Okay, good for you. And you know,
right.
And then at some point he wanted to spar, and I'm like, I don't like to spar people I don't know because, especially somebody who's crazy.
Right.
So, but then we were just having a conversation at a friend's place, and he threw a punch at me. So I backhanded him in the face.
Sure.
And the first thing he said is, he goes, "So did you spiral the chi from your stomach to your dante?" I said, "No, I smacked you in the face."
Right.
It's like it's as simple as that. But I mean, it's almost the difference between playing for a small audience versus a big audience. You have to make, like you're saying, make the audience understand.
Right.
So, well, while we're still into it, maybe we could go a little bit further in depth into the page,
sure,
the campaign page, and maybe we can talk a little bit about the rewards and what's available to people. What do you think, Patrick? So they know what.
Well, I had one question that I was leading up to with all of these tangents in the mix. And it had to do with the fact that Rondo, our one of our protagonists here, that you set up his character sheet, right? According to
D&D. Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
just because we've been talking about, like, facing off against a minotaur, the whole unlikely fight sequences. So like just wanted to throw that in there. We don't have to cover the particulars of
No, I'd love to. Did I sent you guys the sheet, right? Did I send it to you?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
well, because it was Patrick's idea to do a character sheet of the main guy for D&D, and I thought it was such a great idea, and everyone I talked to loved it. And so I actually rolled him up with a friend of mine who's a DM, and so we rolled up his stats and we figured out what his multi-class was, and we went real deep on it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And so will this be something that's going to be available to backers? Is this going to be an add-on that I could like click around and find?
Yeah, so at
this
some point,
page?
so one of our stretch goals is it's going to be a digital parchment basically with Rondo on it, and there's going to be a couple of drawings that are going to be just on the digital character sheet, and the goal is to do every issue. We're going to have a stretch goal of Rondo will have his character sheet, Peachy will have his character sheet, and eventually all the main characters in the world are going to be playable in D&D, I think. So yeah, it's,
I mean,
as a
clearly
huge
you have the
D&D
source
nerd,
book already, right?
right? Yeah, the simple truth is James has created an incredible cast of characters, and I have gone even further with making sure that I know like how many buckles there are, like how many badges each person wears, like what so that character guy with the stabby, so he fights in this little tournament with Princess Terra. That's the terror right there. So he fights with her and he loses. And I thought it'd be really great is if he gets so upset by that defeat, a little girl beating him, basically a tiny character, that he goes and gets bigger gauntlets and he trains and he gets better and he buffs up, and he improves. Not unlike Naruto or Dragon Ball Z, where like the villains come back, like they train and everyone levels up. And so I wanted him to come and level up basically. And he fights her again in the next miniseries, and loses. And then so he's going to level up again, but this time he's so desperate that he goes to an evil wizard, and he basically sells his soul to get more and more powerful. So we'll see this guy, even though seems like a throwaway character, we'll see this guy throughout the series as he pursues his own agenda of revenge and power. So yeah.
How many times does that happen in a martial arts class, right? It's
week
right. 1, week 2, week 3.
Well, I mean, listen, every time someone gets you with something that you like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. Right. So, and now I keep an eye out for it. I'm going to make sure that instead of getting kicked in the ribs again, I will make sure my elbow isn't tight and that I get you in the foot, as opposed to eating that in the liver. So yeah, I definitely think that there's going to be a lot of characters like that who live in the world along with our main characters, and so that you'll see them grow and change too.
That's great. And I'm just glancing at. It looks like you got a couple more backers, so it's at 11,721.
Oh wow, amazing! Oh yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so you're closing in even closer.
That's really great.
So close.
Yeah. So a couple other stretch goals. We're going to do the D&D sheet. And then that'll be, I'll just send that to everyone who is a backer. And then also another one of the bonuses I want to throw in is that James and I have the original pitch for the series when it was called Sellsword and Son. So the original script, before we called it Rogue's Kingdom, it was called Sellsword and Son. And so I have the original script with all my little doodles on the side as my little thumbnails as I try to figure out what to draw. In our original pitch packet that has a lot of concept art that no one's seen before. So we're going to set a special DVD, or not DVD, but special digital PDF of that stuff will go out to everybody. And then another stretch goal that I want to do is when I want everyone, like we're going to have just a black and white version of the comic so that everyone can have, like they can see the art And then there was some talk of even maybe sending out crayons so that kids could color it.
Oh,
So,
that's cool.
yeah.
That's cool. That's awesome. Wow.
We
And speaking
got to find you a source for branded crayons, right?
Right. Exactly. Well, there definitely have to be Rogue's Kingdom crayons with like the special colors, like special Brennan colors, like those beautiful purples and bright greens that he uses. Yeah.
Right, but it should be named like blood red and
It's
black
gonna be
eye
Minotaur red.
purple and
Yeah.
and speaking of colors, the colorist is Brennan Wagner. And maybe you could just let everybody know about him and how he came to join the team really quickly.
So he's amazing. And what's great about his colors is that it is not how I'm not a colorist. I've been penciling and inking for so long that I see the world in mostly lines and in black and white and silhouette. So I am not a colorist. And when Brennan came on, I loved his colors and his mood right away. And then I saw what he was doing with the work. And in my mind, I always pictured more of a Hal Foster kind of thing, because that's kind of what I'm going for, is to try and be a Prince Valiant. But then when I saw the colors that Brandon did, not just like, wow, that is so much better than anything I had in my mind. It's just so much more vivid, and his emotional context is so much better, and his sense of mood is so much better than anything I could have imagined before. And he just brings so much personality to the book. I think he takes my drawings to the next level for sure.
Definitely. When we were on Drinking Draw, one thing I noticed was his mastery of temperature. Usually you don't see this strong sense of temperature. You just see rendering and colors. But he definitely understands where to put the cool colors and the shadows and the warm, or vice versa, depending on things. And just beautiful work. Beautiful
and his
work.
sense of the time of day, because I basically told him, all I said is like, so this opening scene takes place at dusk, right? Like, so and I wanted to do that because I don't understand how to do colors, but I do understand sort of the language of colors. And so I wanted this opening scene, this first issue, is that the sun is setting on these characters' past lives. Like their past is going to be definitely behind them. And I wanted to accentuate that by the sun actually going down. So a lot of this action takes place at that was it called the golden hour, the magic hour?
Yeah.
So that time right as the sun is going down, and it's that dusk. And so it's that golden red, that fire, right? That sort of that crucible. And so that's all I told Brennan. And then he comes up with this incredible version of the city as the sun goes down. And it looks like exactly all the emotional gravitas that I was asking for.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's excellent. And then I noticed the night scene is literally like, the reversal of that, right? It's all the purples and blues. So there's that complementary thing going on with the color theory. That's amazing. Well, as we wind down, is there anything else that you want to add about the campaign or where things are going? Or
well, one of the things I really wanted to point out is, like, I could talk all day long about how great the story that James has written, but like, sadly, we don't have it lettered yet, and I think that people aren't getting how awesome the story is. I mean, I think they can probably tell from the visuals, but like, it's so rich, and the characters are so well thought out, and the journeys they're classic. They're classic stories, I think, of the reluctant hero doing the right thing even though you don't want to. I think that I think James has written a beautiful story. Like, and were I not drawing it, I would be really happy to read it. And one of the ways that people are going to be able to just enjoy the pure genius of James's words is that he has written, in every issue, he has written little short stories about what's going on in the book, or some backstory for one of the characters. And the first story is there's three people in that prison cart. There's Rondo, Peachy, and a guy named Arlo. And we don't really know anything about Arlo, except that he's unfortunate enough to be stuck in a cage with these two guys. But James has written the backstory is about how did Arlo wind up in that cage. So there's the there's history everywhere. Like every character has a past and they have their own reality. And then one of the extra things that's going to be in the deluxe issue, thank you again, Patrick, that was a great idea. The deluxe issue has the letters page, and it's the Lumpland Gazette, and I've designed it to be like it looks like an old French newspaper that they would do off the press, those pamphlets. And James has written what the articles would be in that newspaper if you lived in that town. So it's all that cool stuff. It's all like what the king is up to, like what's the old wizard has just died and now we're defenseless. Like it's all this great backstory and context for anyone who wants to basically, we want you to live in this world. And so we've tried to do everything we can to make it a pleasant place to visit.
That's great. And from what I understand, James actually wrote a little bit of novellas, kind of like novelizations that, are forthcoming. So it really is a fully developed world and experience for everybody, which is amazing. Wow. Well, we're big fans and you and James, just absolutely prolific. And, I remember your work all the way back in the Malibu days and definitely there's a lot of talent at that company, but definitely you two are some of the big standouts.
Oh, thanks, man.
Oh, definitely. And it's great to see what you're doing as a fan, but also, I just really appreciate when people kind of go out there and do their own thing. I think it's great that you're doing that. One thing I just want to add to everybody is, please make sure to back the campaign. And there's different tiers. You can back it, at an entry level tier or at, a different level. There's lots of different options. And also make sure to share the campaign. That's a big thing, whether or not you can pledge at this time, please share it and help get the word out because, this is the team and this is the entire company, as it were, that's invested in this. And they've done their work, and I'm sure it's going to be an amazing experience for everybody. So please make sure to do that. And if you are planning on backing, back early, because momentum is a huge thing when you're crowdfunding. So please make sure to do that.
Well, I already noticed that a few of those premium rewards are already gone. Some of those works of original art have been snatched up.
They have, yeah. It's been the outpouring has been really encouraging and heartwarming.
Excellent.
And look at that, you're so close. Look at that. If I was good at math, I would.
I know, it's amazing. I mean, honestly, it's better than I ever could have. It's better than I possibly imagined. It's wonderful.
Definitely. Well, sky's the limit. We still have 25 days to go. So
Yeah, I mean, the more people we can get it out to, the sooner that we can get the second issue and the third issue done. Like this is definitely momentum is key because this is all I want to draw now. I don't want to do anything else. So the more I can focus on this, the happier I am.
Excellent. We look forward to more for sure.
Awesome.
Well, while we're on another, where can people, other than Rogues Kingdom, where can people keep in track of you online, social media, things like that?
So I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and under Johnsonverse. So Jeff Johnson, Johnsonverse. I'm pretty easy to find. And then I'm now on Blue Sky, also under Johnsonverse. So, yeah, check me out on any of those. I am pretty good about responding to messages and comments and stuff, so I'm pretty available. And thanks everyone for supporting it. It's been amazing.
Definitely, it truly is amazing. I was just so speechless looking at all of that stuff, man. I'm so all in. I want to be there. I want to roll up a character in this world.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that I'm really excited about is like I can't wait to play Rondo. I can't wait.
I know we'll have to save discussing like monk rules for another episode.
Absolutely, yeah.
There you go.
But because he definitely has some double attacks and he has some sneak attacks. He has some cool stuff.
So excellent.
Very cool. And you'll notice if you need to find the link, it's right there, ink.pub. /Rogues Kingdom. That's one word. You can also find it on Kickstarter if you just type in Rogues Kingdom. If you do that, make sure to put the apostrophe after the S, not before it. It's a little easier to find out.
Right, because there's so many rogues.
Definitely, but only one Rogues Kingdom. So keep
It's
that
true.
in mind.
Right.
And Patrick, where can people find you online?
Oh, you can find, this is my artist website, Lugo Arts, where I update my blog there fairly, twice a month, more or less. But that's also where you can sign up for my newsletter, or newsletter, I'd like to call it, where I also
just signed up for it.
I know, I'm so glad. I every second Tuesday I release it, sometimes with an exclusive comic or some other, some of the other various projects I'm working on, like my graphic novel, A Tiger's Tale,
Right.
which you can find on atigerstale.com. Let's see if I can find that. Oh, I don't have that banner up. I must have deleted it, but that's okay. Let's move on to.
Well, before I give my information, our good friend Api Ngol, that Chinese history guy, you can find his channel on YouTube, says good luck with the campaign. Awesome art.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Api, and good luck with your campaign. Zhao #1, just maybe 2 more days. ZHAO #1, and that's on Kickstarter.
That one's a stellar piece. Yes, share far. Like I like to say, right? Support is as simple as a share.
Thank
But
you.
lastly, if you want to find out Kurtis's project, right? The legendary Shadow Ghost, you could find it at The Shadow Ghost.
Yes, theshadowghost.com. And I also have a newsletter. You can subscribe and get information on that. And also, if you're interested in learning Kung Fu online, anytime, anywhere in the world, you can go to my Kung Fu website, tigercrane.net.
Awesome.
And thank you. And we'll end the show with we're gonna play the Rogues Kingdom trailer, the trailers for our 2 projects, and then Jeff, if you have an extra minute, we'll just say our goodbyes after the trailers off air. If you
absolutely, right on.
We have snacks in the green room. Don't go easy on the absinthe, and we'll be there momentarily.
Oh, cool.
Exactly. All right, and without further ado, make sure to back Rogues Kingdom.